entre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard semblant élevé, l'étendard semblant élevé. Entendez-vous dans les campagnes mugir ces farouches soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans vos bras, égorgés au fils de campagne. Armes, citoyens, ornez-vous, bataillons, marchez, marchez, et sans dur, pas vrai, vénoncions.
Precious ones of the light, I have a request to make of you this morning, and that is that you shall perform a spiritual exercise by giving me your attention for a moment. I desire that you shall put yourself in the place of your own beloved mighty I Am presence as a creator, and consider for a moment the experience which would come to you when you would, with all of your heart, desire to create and endow substance with thought and feeling, with energy, with compassion, and the best gifts which life could give. I would like you to put yourself in the role of creator and recognize then how that when that specific magnification of your love which you had brought forth as creation into manifestation would turn through the misuse of free will from all of the tremendous matrices and patterns of beauty which you had created in the inward parts and embraced lesser images, how you would feel and what you would do to desire to relieve the pressures of anxiety in the creation which you had made, which then would fall under the hammer of karmic law and the suffering and distress of mortal manifestation. Recognize then for a moment how great the infinite love of God is for every part of life, for the creative act is an act of great grace, whereby mankind have been given a most magnificent opportunity, an opportunity unparalleled in the universe anywhere, for God has created man in the equality of his own image, in order that he might endow mankind with the full faculties of the divine. Let men then understand that the eyes of God are too pure to behold inequity, and the Spirit of God today remains completely enarmored by the light of his own supreme purposes, and without involvement in the drama of man's thought and feelings which are less than the divine ideal. It is impossible for the Godhead to permit his consciousness to be dragged down from the high levels of cosmic purpose, and therefore he has established, blessed ones, the mediatorship of your holy Christ self, to be able to reach up into those dimensionless worlds of cosmic light substance and commune with those worlds of the eternal presence, at the same time being able to recognize the pressures of mortal need and the desires of mankind, that they might be assuaged and that mankind might be given comfort in the moment of need and every assistance which the great karmic law will allow. I tell you today that the world filled with billions of persons is indeed in pain and travail, and the power of heaven is most compassionate to it because of the universal Christ consciousness which seeks to mediate in all creation the distresses of mankind and to produce in the world the activity of light which will give man his immortal freedom and deliverance from the distress which he has created. None of outer manifestation is the will of God, and therefore today, as I speak to you, it is to bring you some understanding of the individual needs of mankind, how that individuals must learn to glorify the consciousness which they have of self, the awareness of opportunity and life experiences, so that they will be able to utilize these divine opportunities as they were originally intended to be used for the freeing of the human soul from the dregs of mortal thought and feelings. I tell you, precious ones, today upon this planet, above 98 7/10% of mankind's consciousness is involved in some reasonably useless act centered around the outer realm of thought and feeling, and a very small percent indeed of the residue is utilized for the freedom of man. Is it any wonder then that individuals are in distress, seeing they consume so much of the divine radiance upon trivia, and so little of their attention is actually turned to the divine ideal? I would therefore ask you today, in God's name, to school your consciousness, that your consciousness might come in greater measure under the fullness of your divine presence. Your presence is the fullness of all that God desires for you, of all that God desired in the beginning when the creative act was performed. Because this is so, it is necessary then that men should put their attention upon that area of cosmic reality and take their attention from the world and the causes of their distress. How can you expect to manifest the beauty and perfection of inner spheres of light when your every thought and feeling is concerned with the perpetuation of some ideal which is not often clarified completely even to your outer self? Precious ones, there is then today, at this very hour, a great universal opportunity awaiting the Brotherhood of Light, which seeks to illumine mankind as to the divine purposes for this earth planet. But until individuals themselves are prepared to manifest the beauty and glory of the divine plan, so that outer mankind can see that we do have representatives upon earth who are capable of demonstrating that which they claim to portray, we will be unable to direct the masses of man's consciousness toward the light. For you see, while it is also true that there is a general radiation of cosmic purpose out into the world of form, so that mankind are all in a sense being courted by the divine and admonished to do well, it is necessary that this shall take some form of active part in the world of form under divine direction, as the very organization which sponsors this activity today, even in the outer realm, the Summit Lighthouse activity. You see, precious ones, a chain is no stronger than its weakest link, and in a great sense this is also true. Therefore, each link in this chain of immortal love and light from the very heart of the divine presence should understand that it has a need to function according to the cosmic purposes which gave it birth. Unless individuals shall understand that, I fear that mankind shall continue to serve haphazardly and without the fullness of the light of cosmic purpose which can come into manifestation, as individuals shall forget themselves and shall forget the activity which causes them to turn their every attention upon their own comfort and happiness. Right now, may I ask you one and all to conduct a little experiment for a moment, which will give you some awareness of the great power and tides of life which function from the octave of light from whence I come. Will you then for a moment take your attention from your outer self and place it upon your divine presence? Will you place it upon the radiance, the central radiance of that presence, and realize that you are not just a physical form or a mass of bones and nerves, of energy and of congealed light substance, but that you are in reality a spirit made of the very essence of God's own heart? Recognize then that that spirit, that reality is the real you, and that this is that which ought to act in the world of form both now and at all times. If you will take it away from the world of personality, from the world of flesh and blood, from the world of distinction, which desires to expand its own purposes at the expense of its divine ideals, you will come to recognize that if you can sustain this thought and feeling for a moment, you ought to be able to sustain it for just a little bit longer. Don't you think so, blessed ones? Well then, if you can sustain it for a minute, why not try to sustain it for an hour? And if you could sustain it for an hour, why not for a day? And then permanently. For after all, precious ones, it is this thought of individuality and separation which causes mankind to function to protect himself against other parts of life, whereas when individuals feel very much a part of the mainstream of consciousness, especially the consciousness of the mighty I Am presence, of the great God ideals and God design, they are able to hold that image as a point of desire, as a goal and a goal post, which they may then move toward with greater alacrity. I think there is nothing more despicable in the world, precious ones, than a spirit of apathy, and a spirit that continues to feel that all is hopelessness. Are you aware, precious ones, that it is the sinister force and the negative activities of the planet which desire to create enmity between individuals, so that they will feel by reason of that human enmity that there is no hope in the world for peace? And this is exactly what takes place in individuals when they have a sense of overpowering sin and error, where they continue to think that they are perchance victims of something which they cannot control. And because they feel so helpless and they recognize human futility as being everything around them, they are not able to tie in to the great reservoir of cosmic ideals and the master plan of cosmic light substance which descends from the heart of God. They do not recognize then that it is this substance, this essence, this tangible manifestation of God's love for man that enables him to actually gird up the loins of his mind and being, to pull himself together, as it were, to recognize that now is a day of great opportunity when he must, for all eternity, exercise the privilege of individuality as a son of God who consciously identifies with the universal consciousness. Unless you shall master this phase of your existence now, I do not hold hope for you that you will be able to do it once you are bereft of the body and the consciousness which God has given to you. For the most precious gift which God has given to man is the gift of consciousness, and it smacks, precious ones, of immortal substance, of immortal life. For consciousness is able to know that I am that I am. And because you have that precious gift of consciousness now, I urge upon every one of you that you utilize each moment of every day for the establishment of threads of contact with your divine presence and with the ascended Master's octave, that the power of the infinite light of God that never fails may descend into the force field of your consciousness and give you victory in the arena of the world, so that you will not come under the domination of outer hypnotic effects directed not by mankind, but by the sinister forces and strategies of the powers of darkness that stem from a very ancient and old evil, which has held the planet in bondage for far too long. I want every one of you to know that it is the desire of the ascended masters and cosmic beings to free every individual as well as the planetary body from those negative forces that again and again will recreate the same negative situations, utilizing different people and different series of circumstances in order to hold mankind in bondage and keep his attention riveted to the outer world, where fear and trembling in the cup of life causes him to constantly perceive distortion everywhere around him, until the beauty of nature and the divine manifestation fails utterly of comprehension in the domain of consciousness. Now is the time that God has decreed that you should have your freedom. And I tell you, as I am speaking to you, I have a great phenomena to reveal to you. For the beloved Helios, the great God of the solar system, has descended here upon this platform beside me, and Helios and Vesta have joined me, and we represent a triumvirate of the solar system to call to mankind's attention that the days of his tenure upon this planet can very well be very short, and it can easily come to pass that some of the very activities which were revealed by Edgar Cayce shall indeed manifest in this time and bring about the destruction of great parts of your nation as well as great parts of the world, and frightful aberrations will occur then throughout the planetary body, which we desire this day to stop in the name of God by the power of light and light's victory. We desire to take mankind, who are actually a mass of children who are eating of the pottage of the world, we desire to take them and alert them to the great God design which they ought long ago to have known and externalized. We desire to awaken them from the lethargy and sleep of the senses, and to cause them to understand that the blessings of Almighty God are for them, that they are not any part of identification with some human individual's consciousness or concept of mortal salvation, that they are the part of the immortal love of God, which framed mankind and all universal cosmos in the beginning, which sustained it throughout all ages and continues to the present day to sustain life, in hope that the great purposes will be served, because mankind will understand the responsibility of bringing about a golden age concept in full manifestation over the governments of the world. The governments of the world will be captivated by the love of He who comes forth as the great Son of the Divine Mother, even the Christ manifestation of every man, who shall rule the nations as a rod of iron, because he shall rule from the heart of the individual. For mass salvation also is very much a part of individual realization, and individual realization, precious ones, is the realization of your own mighty I Am presence, of its dimensions of consciousness, and of its power of ultimate victory for every part of life. There is never any intent in the Godhead whatsoever that any part of life should be lost, but that all parts of life should be salvaged by the light itself. And the ark of safety is the point of cross, where there is a conjunction of the configuration of the ark, and where then man comes into awareness, living, breathing awareness of Almighty God and of His infinite love and capacity to endow His creation with the love that in the beginning framed the earth and all that is. Won't you please be seated? Your beloved Helios and Vesta have decreed that throughout this afternoon they will remain in this building and radiate their love out into the world, into all areas of conflict, and also as a unifying cosmic intelligence unto the world and the planetary body, released in the name of the great white Brotherhood, for the purposes that were ordained in the beginning. Precious ones, for a moment then, I ask again that you join me in the beginning. Consider yourselves then no longer to possess a worldly name, but to possess the capacity of receiving a new name and a white stone of immaculate purity. Consider also that you are now in the beginning, that the free winds of the Holy Spirit are able to blow through the substance of your being, that the power of the Spirit is able to expand your consciousness out from your physical form until the universe is spread beneath you as a canopy upon which is woven the destiny of nations, of stars, of galaxies, of sun systems, and of universal creation. Consider for a moment that as you gaze upon this great unfolding panorama of reality, that you are not only a part of it, but a co-creator of the divine love intent of He who framed it all. Understand that His wisdom is ineffable, that His wisdom has the power to convey to you, everyone, an awareness of that immortality which He Himself holds and is. The reality of God is your reality. His gifts are your gifts. His purposes are your purposes. There are no higher purposes, and when at times you are captivated by the hypnotic effects of the sparkle and glitter of individual personality as it fears extinction, recognize that your sustaining power lies not in the domain of mortal expression, but in the immortal perfection of your own God presence and that power which I am manifesting today. Accept it and be free. Understand that the power of light is creating a pressure of spirituality in this room and in this force field, which, if you will accept, will be most effective in changing the state of your consciousness until your consciousness can become identified with your Creator. As it does, man establishes friendship with God and becomes a part of the Brotherhood of White, those who walk among men as emissaries of light and to serve the causes of freedom both now and forever. The Brotherhood of White did walk upon ancient Mu, upon Lemuria. The Brotherhood of White did walk even the streets of Atla, of Atlantis, and walks today on Atlantis. Come again, O Atla, Queen of the waves, Poseidon, thou beauteous expression of a golden age of yore. How magnificent are divine purposes, and how beautiful is the spirit of love as it enamors the mind of little children who, running in the fields beneath the canopy of blue and the golden orb of the sun, feel the freshness of life vivifying their consciousness, who understand that the warmth of the sun is the kiss of Helios and Vesta, is the kiss of God upon their skin, and desires that they should absorb it and understand that in addition to the outer manifestation of the sun, there is the spiritual sun behind the sun, the great love tide of God, that in kissing the soul by the gentility of the Eternal Father's perfect image, He brings to that soul an awakening. And as the consciousness awakens, the consciousness comes as a rose from bud to bloom. And the essence of sweetness released from the manifest soul is the fragrance of eternity poured out into a waiting world to bring awareness of the sunrise of God's love. God's love is the eternal sunrise. And I say to you today that the nation of Japan, long ago in its early Sumerian culture, understood the meaning of the rising sun, but it became a victim of a hoax, and the war gods of ancient Manchuria arose to exert their influence over the neighboring Japan. And so it came to pass that destructivity was brought against America. But the woman with the great wings of an eagle has flown here in the name of freedom and in the name of liberty to America, and has come to these shores that the Christ image, long ago born in Bethlehem of Judea, should grow up as a cosmic possibility to every man as God intended it, so that the original birthright, lost also in days of old by Jacob unto Esau, may be esteemed by every man, that men may become neither children of bondage of Hagar the bondwoman, or of descendants of Esau, but shall rather become children of the freeborn, children of liberty, liberty's children, able to externalize the new culture, the new Colossus, the new Atlantis, the new conception, novus ordo seclorum, annuit coeptis, and so the great seal of the United States shall become the seal where the power of infinite love shall bring forth in this nation an ascended master idealism which shall spread to all nations. Not then the proliferation of communism and communal influences shall spread throughout the earth, but in its place the concept of liberty and freedom for every man, with the revivification of those ancient principles which caused the forefathers and founding fathers of this nation to seek refuge here on these teeming shores, now filled with abundant life, but not filled with an abundant life of the spirit, but an outer manifestation that, as animals in a zoo, has caused mankind to become gazing stocks for one another. For when the multitudes go out today of a Sunday afternoon to walk the streets and byways of life, in the crowds they gaze out upon one another as they would upon the animals in a zoo. And I tell you, there is very little realization by mankind of the fact that they are gazing upon a magnificent living soul, that that living soul is the divine image, that into that divine image the power of the infinite immortal God by his intelligence has breathed life and life expression, that that life and life expression is pulsing across the pia mater and the dura mater, enamoring the brain with a realization of divine ideals. Nay, in its place man become as animals, and they think as animals, they feel as animals, and they bring forth animal patterns in their world. What is the meaning of animal? I ask you that, beloved ones. The meaning of animal comes very clearly to view as you will divide the word. Anima, referring to principle or animating spirit, and mal as referring to bad or maladjusted. An animal, then, is a manifestation of badness created long ago by the black magicians, and mankind today have actually patterned their own lives according to the animals rather than following the plans of God. And therefore man today, in their anthropomorphic concept, continue to walk according to human patterns, and the divine patterns are neglected. The schools and universities today, following the scientific understanding of the age, are seeking for outer intelligence, whereas the great power of the infinite love of God would long ago have raised this nation into an ascended master nation if mankind had heard and listened. But they would not hear, for their ears were waxed dull of hearing, and they listened instead to the voices of the night and the voices of darkness, to the voices of shadow that came forth as wolves in sheep's clothing, and spoke to mankind and said, "Hear us." I tell you, the power of God and the power of the human spirit, the power of the animating principle of the cosmic intelligence is far greater than all of the preachers in this nation today and in all the nations of the world. For the power of the infinite law of God is the voice of one crying in the wilderness of each man's flesh, asking for a refinement of that flesh, asking for a new heart of flesh, asking for a refinement of consciousness, asking for a refinement of the meaning of liberty, and asking mankind to understand that his own significant contribution to universal consciousness is necessary in this age, that by his recognition of his own inimitable part in the great manifest laws of God in this age, he can come as a living soul into the full manifestation of cosmic Christ intelligence, which will give this age her freedom. I do not need 2,000 men. I need only 1,000 dedicated individuals upon this planet in order to change the very face of the earth. I tell you, we had far less in the days when Jesus walked among men. And if today we can have your attention, and you will keep it upon your presence, and you will stop the activity of human limitation and deciding that you cannot do it, I assure you that we today, from our octave of light, will assist you in doing that which today seems impossible to you. Do you think for 1 minute that heaven is limited by some mortal comprehension of what an individual can do? I speak now of Abraham, the father of a great nation. I speak of Lot, who lived in Sodom and Gomorrah. I speak of Enoch, the seventh from Adam. I speak of Moses, who led the children of Israel through the Sinai desert. I speak also of those who were torn asunder, of those who were persecuted, who came in skins of goats and of wild animals, eating honey and locusts. I speak of John the Baptist. I speak of the great of the earth, of the great souls, of the great poets, of the great teachers, of the great spirits, of the old days of elder art, when the magnificence of God's perfection came forth in a soul, men did not need to be told this is a great individual, for they were aware of the greatness of the individual because the love light of God shone forth through the soul. You are today children of the Son, and if you accept it, you will be. If you do not accept it, you will not be. It is as simple as that. It is either yes or no, and the acceptance and the pressure thereof must come from your octave. We can only open the door of assistance. We can only offer ourselves to you. It is up to you individually to accept and understand that our reality is a blazing reality which is needed for the earth. We are needed, but we are needed to shine through you. We must shine through you as you externalize our activity in your force field and accept it. The world today is in the greatest peril of any age past, for the communal influences of communism, which are not the influences of the spirit, but of a dialectic materialism, are not on the wane, but are on the expansion in human consciousness. Many intellectuals today embracing these concepts as the fiat of the new age, preferring instead to follow the new wave of communal influences, not understanding that they are buying a mess of pottage, a bowl of soup, and selling their birthright for it. Liberty is what you want, and liberty is what you should have. Liberty is what mankind hungers for, but it is a soul liberty, and a liberty to pierce the veil of progressive revelation and see what stuff life is made of. See what stuff the dreams of God are made of. Of this ye are made, and by his laws obeyed, you will be sustained forever and arrayed in garments of white substance, glistening power of the sun itself, the central sun image. And you will live, and you will breathe, and a new heart of flesh you will have, and that heart will be a heart that does not fail, but forever and forever it will be endowed by the essence of the threefold flame of life, blazing from the heart of your presence into your own consciousness and making you with him a child of the Son, a living Christ, every one. Ladies and gentlemen, in the name of mankind's freedom and for the hope of the new age, I bid you adieu. tribute to 70,000 years and more of service unto the mankind of earth is due your beloved Saint Germain. The magnificent service of this soul devoted to the cause of freedom has given rise to wonder in heaven, and the tides of light and love from his heart, together with Jesus and other ascended beings who have come by God's grace beneath my tutelage, is indeed a wondrous thing to behold. For when the teacher can perceive through the screen of the ages the magnificent God control of one whose every act is dedicated to the cause of freedom and the causes of his love, it means that compensation echoes down the corridors of the centuries to the teacher. And thus at our level, my brethren, I convey to you there is joy in heaven over the dedication of the Avatar. The dedication of the Avatar to eternal principle. And yet, it is not a lesser dedication than that which comes to men in a relative sense in this hour, embodied among you, who elect self-consciously to pursue the path of freedom against the barbs of the world. Long ago it was said that the time will come when he who killeth you will think he doeth God service. And thus down through the ages there has occurred upon the planetary body again and again the sawing asunder, the tossing to the lions, the ridiculing of and the destruction of the flesh form of the various representatives of our radiance who have sought but to ennoble mankind. We do not care to dignify their vainglorious efforts at defamation by comments on their behalf, for the lords of karma have always conveyed the fullest extent of the perfidy and destructivity of those individuals who have turned against the light and sought to malign the holy purposes of Almighty God. We today of the ascended Master's octave, mindful of the intense fury of human scorn, as nation turns against nation and people against people, as ideas themselves in conflict set the world aflame with destructive impulses, do understand that this is a destruction of the laws of brotherhood and of the golden rule. But if mankind are fooled by their own antics, then I declare to you tonight they are also fooling other individuals by them. The way is childlike and simplicity itself. The way is not complicated by human ambition or by human imagination, but thinking does make it so. And thus, because individuals imagine that the old ancestral thirst for vengeance must be served and realized, we see today that there is a perpetuation made of mortal dissonance, and the cosmic orchestration of purpose goes unserved, and the world does not hear the symphony of the spheres or the magnificent ideations of the ascended Master's octave when the holy bells of peace peal out the joy of God unto the world. When the angels came over Palestine long ago, echoing the joy of heaven at the birth of that great avatar Jesus, it came to pass that the angelic message that was heralded and recorded to the present day, Gloria in excelsis Deus, glory unto God on high, and peace to men of good will, has passed unheeded these many centuries. And thus war after war and rumor of war has gone down upon the record, and the passions of men have bled them of the energies that would otherwise have produced a golden age of Christ's magnificence to the planet. But the day has not ended, for the day of the seventh root race has not even yet begun, because it is but a dim perception in the minds of men and in the hearts of those who struggle to part the strands of human myopia and bring forth upon the screen of God realization the fruit of strivings in an age not of innocence but of blasphemy. The age is one of blasphemy without cause, for I think that no other age has been one in which the drudgery of the world has been so relieved by the ministrants of science as in the present time. Sociology, too, and new adventures in exploration of ideas has enabled the mind of man to enrich itself beyond the capacity of man's own awareness of progress. And thus today the world stands at the crossroads of a great strangeness, a strangeness that is indeed a truth stranger than the fictions of men's evil imaginations. For today, men of science and learning are not able to pool their knowledge into a vast panacea of healing love. For with all of their getting of human knowledge, they have not received the unction of the Spirit of love into the world. And love has departed from the intelligent mind, desiring only, as Narcissus of old, to admire itself in its own great wisdom. The solutions to the problems of the world lie within the domain of consciousness, but the domain of consciousness has chosen to ignore them and instead to turn to the paltry musings of the carnal mind as it seeks to exercise its privilege of pleasure-seeking by letting the winds of mortal blasphemy flow through the zithers of consciousness to create a tinkling cymbal that lingers in the air as the cry of battle and the stench of the dying is today sensed throughout the world. What then of the ascended Master Octave? Is the cup of trembling not full? Is the cup of fear upon the wretched world not contradictory to the intent of Christ's peace? Is the blasphemy which the world utters a truth which is piercing the hearts of men, or is it some remnant of a great reality? I am sure that the Chelas of the light know that there is no shred of sense, but only a manifestation of nonsense in the continual rumblings of the lords of war. I recall full well how that in bygone days, yet in this epoch of time, in Monte Carlo, Mr. Zarkov did consult with the warlords and munition makers, even with the representatives of Frau von Bohlenkrupp, and did seek to produce in the world of form that great and terrible war which was the fruit of the munition makers' desire for greed. Today, when disarmament concepts are in the consciousness of men and conferences are occasionally called by the great powers of the world, the powers of dissonance within the human spirit continue to exercise their dread prerogative to dupe the minds of mankind with the sense that war is inevitable. If war is inevitable, then I say to them all, by the full authority of my life stream and with the breath of God magnificent from the heart of the Lord Mahat Chohan combined with my own energy, then peace is also inevitable to the warriors of the Spirit who understand that the stench and abomination of battle and the rumble of the chariots heard in the earth today is but a manifestation of a very old and destructive bloodthirstiness on the part of mankind who desire to feed the vampire hordes of the brothers of the shadow in the astral realm, that they may drink of the flesh of men, that they may drink of their blood, that they may consume the flesh of captains and of kings and of mighty men, is recorded in the apocalyptic vision of John the Revelator as a manifestation of cosmic truth, which ought to teach the people of the world who have the power of vision and perception to see what the great truth is, that it is necessary to maintain the life energy in the brothers of the shadow who are bereft of all power and consciousness unless they can perform a vampire activity with a renewal of energy which is in the manifestation of human blood. And therefore I declare tonight, as I have not hitherto declared in the outer courts of mankind, that it is this bloodletting which is performed perforce in order to sustain the vampire hordes of blackness and shadow that is the real cause behind war, as it couples and joins with the greed of mortal men who seek to enrichen their coffers by the production of arms and munitions and the activities that proliferate with all war activities in all ages. Let men understand then that this ought to be ended, for it is not only a carnage of destruction that robs the mother of the world of her children, that causes Rachel to weep for her children, that causes the motherhood of God upon earth to cry out for the lost ones, but it is also an activity that feeds the hordes that create war in the first place. And let us thus understand the meaning of first cause in negative creation. For there is both a positive creation of the spirit and there is a negative creation of human consciousness which seeks to drench mankind with a miasma of confusion whereby they cannot exercise the divine prerogative of the free will to understand what is happening in the centuries, as mankind, like a merry-go-round or a kaleidoscope, are whirled so fast through the episodes of time and consciousness that they dimly perceive what is happening all around them. I would stop the merry-go-round of human creation tonight for a moment, as Joshua commanded the sun to stand still, and I would say, let us now perceive this kaleidoscopic view of history that has been filled with such myopia from the human standpoint, and let us recognize that the power of the ascended masters has never been heeded by mankind as it ought to have been. For in the days of Napoleon, when your own beloved Saint Germain came to Napoleon and offered to endow him with the great God gifts of power that would have enabled him to have created a United States of Europe, Napoleon fell to the god of ambition, and he sought instead to glorify himself, and thus lost the great opportunity to unify Europe and produce in a United States of Europe a great citadel of freedom there, which would then have prepared a greater pathway in your own beloved America for a great golden age civilization, because the fruits of America are in essence, in its original structure, the fruits of Europe, as Europe has immigrated to the United States and stocked this country with the stalwart stock that have caused it to grow and thrive as a mighty nation. Yet the power of this nation is derived from its divine sources and not from the sorcery of man's consciousness, which does not understand only a small segment of that which he does. Man today, viewed in human creation and life through the windows of individualized consciousness, suffer from a situation similar to a horse, where the blinds do not permit them to see what is to the right or the left, or even behind, but only before. And because that which is before is often behind, we find that they are behind the 8-ball of human creation again and again, and do not understand the direction which they ought to take. This is understandable, O gracious ones, but it is a matter to which we have addressed ourselves again and again, for we cannot convey the fullness of our understanding to mankind, because as they fly through the air with the greatest of ease, like the daring young man on the flying trapeze of karmic energy, and send that energy out into the world without understanding of that which they do, they are bound to make mistakes, for they do not have our viewpoint, nor do they have the full understanding of cosmic law, which God and the masters are anxious to convey to all. And because they lack so much of understanding, they do in error create again and again the same old abortive patterns of hate and human creation, which have never brought them the fruit of peace, nor the awareness of their own divine intelligence. But that divine intelligence, precious ones, is eager at this very moment, as it has been from the beginning of creation, to convey to mankind the fullness of that Christ understanding of the laws of the ascended masters, which will enable individuals to obtain their freedom from all mortal thought and feeling, and understand that the compulsions which they feel are the result of natural human creation, not divine creation. That the compulsions which they feel are wrought as a result of error, and error's children cannot possibly produce the fruit of goodwill and good works, but only divinity and divinity's children, because of the dual nature of mankind, because he is both God and at times demon. He must understand that there is a great need to subvert the human creation beneath the feet of the Christ image. This means that the demoniac impulses in man must be subjected to the feet of the Christ, and Christ and his feet must bruise the serpent's head, even as it will of necessity produce a bruising of the heel of the Christ. And thus mankind cannot expect, in passing through the great cosmic initiations, to do so without some suffering to the flesh, as there is a mortification which must ensue. We have then a very peculiar situation in the world of form. We have a mass of individuals who ought to be a part of a great whole, and in reality are. And we have a multiplicity of forces playing upon mankind's consciousness and seeking to divert their consciousness from God reality and truth from day to day, and bring them down into a state of mortal degradation where reality will seem to be unreality, and unreality will seem to be very real. There is no need, precious ones, for you to indulge yourself in fits of self-condemnation simply because you have not at the present hour realized fully your divine estate. This estate is held for you by your own mighty I Am presence. It is the fullness of the ascended Master's gift of love and divine radiation from the heart of that presence. It is the sole reality of life, and it but awaits your externalization. Mankind, as a sleeping princess, waits the kiss of the sleeping prince to awaken mankind from the dream of mortal fancy into the divine realities and powers of God dominion over his world. But you cannot expect that simply because you shall shake a lazy dog, that upon awakening he shall immediately understand the Christ. You cannot expect simply because you say to your energies, awake, that they will instantly do so. They will blink their sleepy eyes, and there will come into manifestation a certain awareness of consciousness, a segment of reality. But you must also then understand that this is but the beginning, when the first stirrings from lethargy occur in the world of the individual, whereby that individual is then able to gradually draw and magnetize into the force field of his consciousness those great resistless tides of God invincible energy from the heart of the ascended masters and the octaves of light, which will give him his invincible freedom. You do not need to rely upon the arm of flesh. You have but to understand that there is a great world of God dimension which is able to give you your immortal freedom. Do not go to the world and apply to the world for knowledge of your divine self and your God reality. Make your application, beloved students of the light, to Saint Germain, to beloved Jesus, and to your own mighty I Am presence, to the power of life that is able to shake you awake and keep you awake and endow you with the great tides of divine truth which are anxious to flow into the channels which you prepare. But before you dredge out those channels, they will but flow across the deserts of self and the plains there to be absorbed by the idle sands. Man must first dredge in consciousness a pathway leading to the great centers of God realization within even his flesh form, he must also understand that he must set up in the great seven seals of consciousness an awareness of the power of the light, a reservoir of spiritual power. Today man builds haphazardly, and in his haphazard and loose building he constructs not spirals of the spirit, but spirals of egoistic ambition. Men desire to see their children grow up, to do them homage and honor in the annals of the world. They seek also for themselves a life of ease and indolence, when they can travel about the world and be recognized as a great person by mankind. This is not the pathway to your freedom. The greatest among mankind are those who are the servants of all. For only as you render a great cosmic service to the waiting hearts of humanity can you in reality know your true God freedom. Every ascended master and cosmic being has won their freedom through a great service to life and the ministrations to mortal needs. For men are the offspring of God, and in men today is the great symphony of the Spirit, the new colossus of divine immortality that rings forth into the consciousness of man the song of the angels, that tells mankind that he is not dust, dust, earth, earth, and of the earth, earthy, but that he is born of the sun, that he is a dazzling light whose splendor shines in the darkest night, bringing forth the nova of immortal creation, the awareness of the initiate, the standards of the ascended masters, and the banner of Shambhala. There is no need then for men to fear the waves of delusion that has held the human mind in bondage. For if mankind will only open their eyes that they may see, the blazing God reality of universal consciousness can and will descend into the force field of mortal dominion, giving man his God dominion over every facet of his being, and enabling him to stand where the ascended masters stood before their ascension, in infinite communion with the octaves of light, where men then are able to be successful in the fight against those evil impulses which are but stems from their own misguided sowings in the past. As they cut off these stems, as they choke off these impulses, as they transmute them by infinite desire, changing finite desire to infinite, there will come into manifestation in the consciousness of mankind the great power of the Spirit by which men are able to achieve their victory. Then we will not see only one Saint Germain, or one Jesus, or one Buddha, but we will see luminaries appearing as flashes of God magnificence all over the planetary body, and the great radar scope of infinite intelligence which manifests in the ascended master's octave as the power of God's light perceiving that which is happening below. We will see that there are new luminaries of the Spirit bursting forth not only daily and hourly, but by the minute. And we will see that out of the billions of mankind, that there are infinite numbers by comparison to the present few who seek for God, now then desiring to burst forth from the bondage of humanity into the great resurgent powers of Christ identification with God reality, with infinite capacity to do the will of God upon earth and free mankind from all of the bondage which he has had and suffered throughout the ages. This is the purpose of the great white brotherhood, and I have stated it, and I will state it again and again, for so long as it is not a God-realized actuality upon the planet, filling the hearts of men with the fire of inspiration, there is a continuing need. For men are as Balaam, the son of Beor, who walked upon his feet and then rode upon the back of an ass, who spake with a dumb voice, saying, "Why do you beat me?" Mankind today should understand that human creation itself will cry out, and their own flesh will cry out against the abuses thereof. And thus mankind's lives today are shortened by reason of the enormous taxation which they have created, desiring to live life by burning the candles at all ends, as you would say it in your own octave. Men should understand that there is a great need to dedicate themselves a part of each day in the hours of sleep to the ascended masters, committing their consciousness to God as a tiny child does, with an awareness that their consciousness does not then pass into the realm of death or a state of know-nothingness, but that it enters into a sphere of luminous dimension, whereby the God side shall be activated during the night, for there is no night in the consciousness of a luminary of God. And in that state of consciousness, while the body rests, the soul may enter octaves of light, communing with the ascended masters and great God-free beings, and mastering those lessons of cosmic Christ intelligence by which life is then able to enter into the clarity of the Spirit and the power of the Christ, and take that God dominion over his world that will no longer permit him to walk in the states of degradation of mortal consciousness, thought, and feeling which have far too long held sway over his world. Now then, in connection with the problems of mankind, the Middle East crisis is very grave indeed, and graver than men may imagine. It appears now to be settled, and as though the tides of battle were over. But I call to your mind that it is the vampire forces of mortal human consciousness that desire to perpetuate an activity of bloodletting to feed the vampire hordes and denizens of the astral world. This same activity stands behind the recalcitrance of Mr. Henry Ford, Jr. and others in the field of automobile manufacture, who today are not accepting with good grace the attempts of the government of the United States to introduce new standards of safety protections into the automobile industry. I call then to your attention, beloved Chelas of the light, that the carnage of automobile activity as a destructive activity is greater than all of the battles in the world today. And yet the protesters today are marching in the streets of the cities of the world against the war in Vietnam and against the activities in the Middle East. They are decrying what they call the American imperialists. But what of all the manufacturers of the world in connection with the automobile industry? What of their activity that is creating a greater carnage upon the highways of this nation alone than all of the battle activities of the world? Do you see then that this is also fed because it provides broken bodies and fresh blood for the vampire activities of the world that seek thereby to perpetuate themselves and to keep the hordes of shadow darkness active in the world of form, to create hypnotic effects in the world, to create psychicism, to create false prophecy and manifestations against the light? I tell you, beloved ones, that if mankind were able to see clearly, they would repudiate their psychic masters, and they would recognize that even in the religions of the world, there is a need for the spirits of men to arise to divine contact and identification with their own beloved God presence, and separate themselves from the dividing dogmas of the world which separate hearts from heart and create disharmony upon the world, turning brother upon brother and creating again and again old psychic patterns of degradation that spiral man down into the whirlpool of black inky nothingness, whereby he extinguishes the very sparks of his God identity. I say to you then tonight, in the name of the great white brotherhood, that a proclamation has gone forth, and we have made an appeal to the karmic board, which occurred in the month of May of this year, making great appeals to the karmic board to create some new tide and sphere of influence upon the planetary body that would help to change the tides of human affairs away from this destructive mass hallucination whereby men can sit idly by while the carnage upon the highways and byways of life ever mounts, and while the wars continue to take their frightful toll of mankind's identity. Today is the day of salvation. Tomorrow may be too late. Therefore I urge upon all who hear this message an understanding of the need to activate in the world of form by decree, by centering influence through your life stream upon others, and by doing all in your power to change these tides of mortal energy, knowing that we will also not only enjoin you to follow us in the regeneration of cosmic Christ activity, whereby the planet is bathed in the holy anointing of the life of the Christ, but whereby mankind today in the world of form can join themselves unto the ascended masters and the hosts of light as emissaries of that which is right, not that which is might. For the true might of all life is from God, and that which now exists in the world of form as political power is but a small segment of control, which could not possibly have any effect upon mankind except during the tenure of their life upon earth. And when once they have departed the mortal form, they then are face to face with the judgments of eternal righteousness. We call your attention, however, that among mankind, because of their involvements in psychic disturbances and in record reading of old past experiences which have not produced them their freedom, there is a tendency on the part of mankind, even after they pass through the change called death, to continue in the astral realm as a nightmare of human creation which they ought to be freed from. Let everyone understand then that the ascended master laws are the immortal keys to your freedom, and that there is no greater power in the universe than the ascended master laws and the laws of cosmic truth. Your beloved Saint Germain has no other desire than to convey to every one of you the keys to your freedom, that you will not go unprepared into the realm of shadow and into the realm of the veil, but that you will pass through the veil or through the ritual of your ascension by cosmic Christ's command and victory over all of the forces of the world which have far too long held you in bondage. I am the great divine director. I am the arbiter of man's freedom. I am the buoyant energy of cosmic Christ victory, willing to permit you to dip your cups into the fount of my being, and drink ye well, and all of it, of this cup which I bring. For it is a cup of your victory, a cup of divine direction from the very heart of your presence, which I seek to convey. I do not seek to convey some gain to mortal men, but only a gain to the immortal power structure of God's invincible, regenerative seed of life, which is within your consciousness. It is the germ of the infinite within. It is the power of freedom. It is the flame of life that breathes now within you all and beats your heart. This is a dedication to the purposes of the great white brotherhood. This is the ritual of your freedom. This is attainment to the dimensionless realm of the spirit, where man victorious manifests his God design. Aspire to it, and you will one day know it. Aspire to it, and you will one day show it. Aspire to it, and you will one day feel it. Aspire to it, and you will one day see it, and you will heal by it, and feel by it, and know by it, because this light that comes forth from the heart of your presence is a stream of radiant energy, like the first photon of light from the heart of God that responded to the word which went forth in the beginning of cosmos and said, "Let there be light," and there was light. By this power, the very fabric of individuality shall be woven, and man shall walk and talk with God and know the Edenic mysteries with that same clarity which is conveyed from our octaves, as the eyes of men are opened because their body is full of light which they have invoked in love, and the capacity to receive love, and the willingness to obey love, and the power to do the right that makes the might conquering spirit of invincible cosmic honor protection to every son of heaven, whom I am tonight endowing by God's grace with a bit more of that infinite flaming spirit which is their own birthright under God, given to all, intended to ennoble America and all nations of the world by the power that will produce in the time of fullness the sons of God shining forth among men, and their faces shall not be hidden, for the Lord God shall be the light of their presence and the light of their consciousness. And where he is, there will they be also. For where I am, there shall ye be also. And thus has the fiat gone forth, and thus has the word sounded, and thus is the word fulfilled. Hear ye all of it, and do it, for it is truth, and not a word of it shall be lost, but all of it shall be used by some whose eyes are opened. I thank you. friends of freedom, if I should ask myself how much I love thee, it would be a moment when I would chasten myself not to reveal the extent of that love, lest by comparison man were to feel somewhat as a moth before the flame. And then as I ponder this, I am made aware of the love of the Infinite One, and I feel that even my own flame of freedom is but as the flame of a candle or a dying sun before the fires of his great heart. There is then a relativity of comparison which men are sometimes prone to make, whereby they draw analogies about themselves and others which do not bear profitable fruit. And therefore today I urge upon every one an understanding of the meaning of the phrase, "Cast not a stone of stumbling beneath thy brother's feet," for all upon the path are brothers. And we who are the elder brothers and the exponents of freedom, admired by many who know of the troth that we bring, are aware of the need for stability in the body politic of all of our many endeavors upon the planetary body intended to enhance the rising cause of freedom. Freedom needs all of her adherents. Freedom needs the hearts of the many, and the many ought to be inspired by divine grace and to catch the vision of all that threatens the majesty of freedom in our day, threatening to dash in pieces the hopes of the brave and the true, and to cause the fruits of good men to become in vain. We do not intend that this shall happen, and it has never been intended by any that evil should come, or that forces of shadow should supersede the power of light. But it is not so much what men intend as what eventuates that men must be aware of. And therefore we feel today that it is good and proper to say unto you that the eventuation of the tides of freedom handed over to men of God direction is necessary. I say then, by way of interpretation, that men should understand the meaning of going out into the highways and byways and compelling mankind to accept the great cosmic law. The eventuation of freedom is a subject that ought to be understood, but is often not, for people do not really know what it means to make things happen. People are sometimes constrained or fearful because they might be accused of being a black magician if they are to produce some amount of good which is unwanted by mankind. How then would it be possible for God or for the ascended masters to act in the world of mankind except we were invited? And seeing we are invited and do act in the world of form, are our acts not benign and intended to direct a stream of magnificent God light into the world to free mankind from the drags upon his consciousness? Men today are not aware of the drags upon their consciousness, for they are so accustomed to those weights that they seem to feel that those weights are actually a part of themselves. And it is so much our wish this afternoon to penetrate that density of mortal thought and feeling and say to every part of life, this weight of oppression which you bear is no part of your divine reality. It is no part of God, and therefore no part of yours. Will you let go of it? And will you accept in its place my flame of freedom? Will you understand that my flame of freedom is a tangible offering to the world, is a fountain from which all may drink, that God himself is able also to make you a fountain of comfort and a source of freedom and inspiration to those who are around you and who look to you for some degree of inspiration? Men must not be afraid to move forth in the busy streets of life and to do the work of the ascended masters. They must be moved neither by pride nor by prejudice, but they must go forth as the Christ of old to say, "Let all upon whom my shadow shall fall be blessed by light." And if this seems a bit enigmatic, let me say to you it is not. For the reality of truth is that truth becomes complicated in human reason and is often not perceived by men of adult years. This is why the statement of old, proclaimed often by men, that men must become as a little child in order to be led into the kingdom, has such great meaning, because sophistication does not clear the way for the acceptance by mankind of the great power of infinite love and truth. Sophistication may be very valid when it is considered in the light of culture, that is to say, mundane culture and good manners. But it is not necessarily a guarantee to mankind that the great cosmic laws will come to life within the framework and fabric of the self, giving unto individuals the mighty tides of their freedom, which shall shake them to the very roots and foundation of their being, and cause them to be aware that the meaning of I am love and I am God is acceptance. Acceptance of the mighty blazing reality of that which you are in reality, now and always have been. It is delusion, sheer delusion, that separates men from all that is divine and redundant with blessing. The fig leaf consciousness has filled mankind today with shame, and they cover a nakedness that does not exist. How could it be that God could create any hidden recesses of manifestation that would be impure if they were of his creation? Are not men able then to cognize and understand that that which is hidden is human and is not in keeping with the divine patterns of cosmic ideation? And this is the fault, the blame, methinks, to find with it perchance, both now and in all times to come. For you cannot change the spots of a leopard, and you cannot change mortal human consciousness to become godlike. Man, rather, must recognize that in one sense he is the arbiter of his own destiny, and he must work diligently and faithfully to free himself from all that binds him to a round of senseless reason, whereby he deprives himself by reason of that which reason was intended to convey. We therefore say to all of you that the hour has come when the ascended masters must, by cosmic law, increase the tides of freedom among men, whether they will have it or not. For from the earth planet, mighty shafts of light has penetrated heavenward and invoked from the karmic lords of life a response in the name of Almighty God and his holy mercy. Therefore great tides of mercy do come to the earth today, and to all who are waiting to receive that inflow of beauty and light which brings to the mind of man the courage to face all the dark days which are brought about as the returning currents of karma test the mettle of man to see whether or not he is fit to receive the initiatic process that stands before him as the next step on the way. The next step on the way is before every man, whether or not that step shall be conferred upon man as a manifestation of the divine and a holy seeker for pure truth, or shall come to him from the darkened shapes of things to come, emanating from the crystallization of his own karmic matter, is the determining factor which shall decide whether or not the step shall be to the right or to the left, whether it shall mean a marking of time or the manifestation of the bonds of eternal felicity unto the hearts of waiting humanity. The brothers of light stand ever ready and are waiting to bestow upon mankind the divine currents of cosmic grace which shall give them their freedom. But oftentimes the mind is enamored by many petulant problems of the day, which seem to engross the appetites of men and provide them with a hope in some outer condition which will assuage the pangs of the heart as it seeks to find a nucleus of pure light. When mankind do not accept a nucleus of pure light as a worthy, fitting goal for themselves, and seek by outer manifestation to palliate the anguish of their being, they quite naturally within the force field of their world will find inadequacy manifesting. For once they have supplied an outer thirst as a means to substitution of an inner thirst, they are temporarily palliated, it is true, but the darkness of mortal thought and feeling soon closes in upon them, and from the pit of desire, man again and again reaches out to fulfill in the outer realms that which can only be satisfied by the bond of the heart. Jesus of old spake, saying, "The water which I shall give thee shall be within thee, a well of water springing up to everlasting life." Jesus of old said, "He that shall drink of the water which I shall give him shall never thirst again." The fount of freedom today is blazing forth as a flame, and the water is intermingled with the fire of freedom, and it combines in mankind through the binary elements, the manifestation of freedom by water and by fire. And freedom by air comes to man when the ascension is attained, because the water has cleaned the pollutions of the world from the soul and fabric of consciousness, and the fire has established the weld to the great power of Vulcan, the infinite power of light that makes man wedded to his highest self, and able therefore to manifest the freedom of consciousness which comes from God, is derived from the Holy Spirit, and manifests as the threefold flame within the heart, a flame of cosmic opportunity indeed, a flame that waits the expansion of itself by the domain of human consciousness. For men, if they will only understand it, have the power to actually make the flames larger by a simple thought. If men would only realize this, they would see what a simple thought can do. For example, if you are deficient in power, and you are somewhat timid in asking for things, and you feel a need to call forth the great surging power of light into your being, visualize a magnification of the blue plume as it rises and pulsates within your heart. See goodwill, divine will flow. See the will of God as the subtle strength to meet the challenges of daily living. See this flame expand and expand until it engulfs the whole of being. And watch how you will increase the power of your faith and goodwill. If you lack wisdom, do likewise with the beautiful golden plume of illumination. See the vision within yourself, within your own heart chalice, of the flame of illumination pulsing and rising into the cosmic ethers. Watch how you can increase the power of absorption in your world, the power of retention, the power of memory, the power of fitting in the various pieces of the cosmic puzzle, so that the mind can use its divine facility and leap as a young hart to rejoice in the meaning of cosmic wisdom available at the moment of need. This is the will of God. See it now. Rejoice also in divine love if divine love is your problem. Realize that if you are a being that finds it difficult to fraternize with people and to understand them, if you feel an aloofness from other people in your world, increase the tide of divine love from the threefold flame within your heart. The triunity of cosmic effort can cause all three flames to increase, and by a thought man can do it, but he must not be through with it, having done it once, but must continue to nourish it as he would a tender plant, until the matrix of thought and feeling in God magnificence which he has created and nourished for a moment is daily nourished until the flame becomes trained, as a circus trainer would train an animal to pass through a hoop. So divine intelligent energy is willing to pass through the hoop of your attention and consciousness and do your bidding if you are willing to accept the challenge of life and demand of it that it do the will of God for you. This is how you obtain your freedom. It is by self-mastery. You do not obtain your freedom, blessed ones, by criticism of other parts of life, nor do you obtain it by accepting the idea that other parts of life are rumbling against you. You obtain it by an innocence of heart that favors you, because with this innocence you do not need to be wise. The law of God, the greatest law that there is in the universe, is not only the law of love, it is the law of the will. And the will to freedom is a measure of intensity, whereby the consciousness pulls together the threads of its own self, and as a sack will pull together a bag of marbles, so the consciousness, from being estranged upon itself, becomes a unified effort of intelligent light atoms, coordinated into a whole God magnificence, which can be a weight on behalf of freedom in this age, not only for the self, not only for the realm of the individual. In God's name, you do not think that the brothers would come to the planet merely to save one individual alone and pass all others by. Simply because the statement was made by the Christ of old, saying that the good shepherd would leave the 99 and go after that which is lost, does not mean that men shall wrest that scripture to their own destruction by supposing that all cosmic effort is on one man's behalf. Our efforts are on behalf of the many. And when the brothers of light make known to you that this is so, we expect a response in your worlds by a self-generating compassion toward other parts of life that may not at the present moment share your degree of development, either in will, in love, or in wisdom. Men are deficient in one or more of these elements, and sometimes in all. But the means lies within the power of their great God self, the God flame within them, to develop themselves to become ascended masters. We are not afraid to be invaded from your realm, for we know that none shall pass through the initiatic doorway who shall not sublimate the outer nature of man and activate the divine. If then this be the case, we welcome it. We bid you all welcome into our octave, for this is our desire and our purposes, and all that we do and all that we seek to inspire and infire upon you is to create a tide of mighty cosmic energy that shall show you how that by being, through conscious elected seeing, a part of the body of God upon earth, you shall help the planet to a new birth of freedom in the world, whereby the many who are surrounded around by wooden kimonos and by leaden kimonos and by dense concrete kimonos of thought and feeling that seals them from all the beauty of universal law. Instead, we shall produce no flaw, but freedom for all, now and forever. Won't you please be seated? The diplomacy of magnificent effort. Throughout the world today, there are men steeped in pride who deem themselves to be diplomats of great wisdom, and their motives are superiority in craft. We are not against them, and have often worked with them to engender within them a great weight of the substance of the diplomatic art. But unfortunately, they seem to always feel, upon receiving a greater inflow of that wisdom of the art of sheer diplomacy, that somehow or other this has been given rise within them through some self-effort on their part, which ought to bring great tides of human honor into their world, and even their own family ought to bow the knee to the fact that they are indeed part of the diplomatic community. The diplomatic community was started long ago in octaves of light, and diplomacy as we practice it is based upon the externalization in the world of freedom of expression in courtesy and grace and love. It is an old and ancient art, a tradition of the greatest worth. The world knows it not and practices it today as an art to deceive one another by suave diplomatic intonations. We remember the days well when the courts of the world needed the ear of a true diplomat to convey faith in a waning monarch's consciousness, betrayed by his advisors and on the brink of suicide. We know the meaning of comfort and truth, and there is no greater comfort than truth. And to a dying man, I would perchance give first of all the truth of the true state of his condition, that he might utilize every moment of that embodiment to its fullness, rather than pass from the screen of life with a state of consciousness and ignorance. Let men understand the meaning of true love. True love is love of truth, and truth must be enshrined in the hearts of men as a passport to great freedom. I love this activity of the Summit Lighthouse because it has sought to externalize the highest truth in its manifold endeavors. But I am addicted to service to all mankind, and because those who have joined us here in this heart center are addicted also to the service of all mankind, I am also endeared unto them. And I am endearing them with my love. For my love is the love of freedom and the sons of freedom. And the sons of freedom are needed today upon earth as never before. Never before has a configuration of such hate engulfed the world as in the Arabian Jewish situation now involving the Middle East. Never before has such greed and commercialization taken control of the political marts and the men of ambition as in this present hour. Never before have the elements themselves been so hard put to maintain balance upon this planet and keep the universal harmony redundant as the hum of life through the planet as now. Never before have the hearts of men so failed them for fear of the things that are coming upon the earth as the result of the hammer of karma. Never before in history has the world stood at such a position in the age to come as now, a doorway when science, wedded to true theology, could proclaim throughout the world the ascended master truths of life, which would enable man to put an end to all the fear and blinding agonies of this time, all through love and power and wisdom in balance. The triunity of life is symbolized in the fleur-de-lis, which I enshrine. Freedom is my name, and freedom is my game. And for freedom's flame, I expand God's name. I am the advocate of freedom to the planet. I am the advocate of freedom to each individual part of life. I am that which I am by divine grace, and I shall not retreat one single inch from my position, but I shall move with the sons of freedom forward in the light in God's name for the progress of this age and for the freedom of man from all of the kimonos and overcoats of dense mortal substance which he has dressed himself with. Freedom is more than a name and more than a game. Freedom is everything, for it is the freedom of man to express all that God is. And when he expresses all that God is, he will be a son of light. And when the knight commander raises his sword in God's name, it will be a sword of light to cut through the forces of world delusion and say, we will cleave a pathway for this age. In days of old, men went forth physically, by physicality, to win a kingdom. Today the forces are more subtle and deceptive, and invisible forces today shall do battle with that which seeks to enslave the mind of men and the hearts of men and bring them into bondage. And we shall forge a pathway through the continents of the air, and we shall call to the powers of light that are there to come forth now and open the door evermore, evermore into the octaves of pure glory, where freedom is the story of all mankind. You are his children, not born blind, but born to see, born to be all that God is and all that I am and all that you shall be. Accept it then. Go not back into the doldrums of mortal thought and feeling that fails to recognize all that which is appealing of God's delight. Enter now into the lists and help us in the fight to win the victory over sin and stain, to win the victory over human pain, to free the world from all that's vain and senseless of the flesh, and make mankind to know it now. I am the power of Desh and Kal, of space and time, that now sublimely executes a law that God did frame of old, to give to all the fame, the gold, the flame, the troth of victory, that wins for now and all a flame of ecstasy, as life does win its crown, and victors all. The debt and weight of sin goes down, not man to fall.